Why don't you say what's on your mind, though? Just let them know.
Welcome to Passion and Faith. I'm your host, Tashanea Whitlow. Today, we have an exciting show for you. We are talking about healing generational trauma. Yes, I know that sounds heavy because it is, but our guest is going to help us lighten the load and bring some lightness to a serious subject. We have best-selling author of Break the Cycle, Dr. Mariel Buqué. I am such a fangirl. And first I have to apologize. I have a cough drop in my mouth. So in the event that you can see it, I'm just protecting my voice and making sure I don't get you sick. I have been such a fangirl of your work for a very long time. I had the pleasure of meeting you when you were a guest on Good Day.
Yes.
And I became more of a fan just because of your spirit. Not only are you beautiful on the outside, but you can just sense there's something about your spirit that's very warm and welcoming. And you gave me a copy of your book. At the time, it hadn't even been released, Break the Cycle. And I was on my own healing journey, so it was just perfect. It was a perfect read. What I found so profound about your book was a takeaway of we hold 4 generations of trauma. What exactly is that? What does that mean?
Well, we are starting with a big question. And
Right out the gate.
Yes, we are.
We're getting into it.
And I appreciate you for doing so, because I think that it's a really important one. And I'm so grateful that I get to answer this with you. And, you know, the answer to the question is one that derives from ancient wisdom. But lucky for us, in 2025, we also have new scientific methods that are also catching up to helping us to answer that question from the perspective of psychology, neuropsychology, epigenetics, and all of that is to say, you know, really that there are ways in which we're tracking how on a cellular level and on a psychological level, on a neurological level, how we have fragments of the ways in which stress and stress hormones and DNA changes, let's call them, right? DNA messaging have actually been transmitted forward into multiple generations of our family members when those family members have actually suffered traumas or chronic stress. And those alterations have actually been recorded within their bodies, and their bodies have actually then sent those messages forward. It's an actual beautiful, if you might imagine it to be that way, evolutionary response where our family members are telling us, hey, this is something that you might want to understand about your environment, that there are dangers in your environment, and so your body's going to clench up in response to your environment.
Like flight or flight, almost like Maslow's hierarchy, right?
Yes.
If your basic needs almost aren't met, it's hard to attain the higher ones.
Correct. So basically, you know, if our ancestors had actually, you know, let's say our grandparents had actually suffered specific traumas, let's say like community-based traumas or maybe intimate partner violence, anything that, you know, really registered within their nervous system and within their cellular memory, and help them to understand the world is not safe. They actually were able to send that messaging forward biologically to us so that we could then understand, okay, if someone is yelling and yelling towards me and that person is a partner, there is a likely chance that I may suffer an intimate partner violence very similarly to how my grandmother or her grandmother suffered. And so that is a messaging that is being transmitted forward that is actually evolutionarily there to protect us. But unfortunately, it also causes us a lot of pain because it creates this unrest within our nervous system, this unrest within our bodies, within our minds, that doesn't allow us to experience a lot of ease and peace and emotional tranquility.
So basically, your body is always constantly trying to regulate itself.
Correct, yeah.
You feel anxious. Are those some of the tell us some of the telltale signs?
Yeah, well, you know, usually a person will not necessarily be able to experience themselves calming down very easily. So when a person is someone that comes from a lineage of trauma, they may suffer a very similar circumstance, let's say in their workplace. They may, have been yelled at by a boss, and that having been yelled at by a boss could cause them a deep sense of shame. And that deep sense of shame could actually stay with them for days, for weeks, for months, whereas for their colleague who maybe doesn't come from a lineage of trauma and shame,
it just rolls off their back.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so it's a very different circumstance that they're experiencing emotionally, even though they may be experiencing the very same boss.
I'm literally nodding because I can connect with so much of this. But before I get into my story, tell the people why you are such a trusted voice in this field, because that's very important.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
It's true.
Yeah. I have been working on being able to really understand this for a very long time. I have been working within generational trauma narratives, within the therapy room, within research, a lot of which I poured into my book, Break the Cycle, a lot of which
bestseller. Might I add, bestseller.
I'm really grateful that people, were willing to read it and to bring it into bestseller status. And then also, within my practice, which is also called Break the Cycle, it's a practice that it's a therapy practice in New York, New Jersey, and Florida. And that practice actually is also one in which we do a lot of generational trauma work. And all of that is work that holds a lot of research behind it, a lot of tested and true practices around what really helps a person to sustainably heal from these wounds that have been captured for so many generations, and doesn't just place a Band-Aid on healing, doesn't just help a person to feel better, and then a year later, they're back in therapy, they're back in their wounds, and they're feeling just the same as they were feeling back then.
And that's the perfect example of time does not heal all wounds, just actually doing the work. I want to talk to you about the book, Break the Cycle. Did you know that people would resonate with the book in the way they did to make it a bestseller?
What I was hoping is that I could reach whoever would be willing to heal through the book. So, with books, it's a little bit hard. I actually got feedback from someone who is a very prominent author who kind of mentored me a little bit, on the side through the process. And they mentioned, books are really hard to sell. And so I thought to myself, this isn't really my mission. It's not to sell a book. It's to provide a healing tool that is accessible to people, a healing tool that could be made accessible to someone like myself, like my family members, like the people that, are in my community who wouldn't otherwise have this tool available to them because, let's be honest, healing is expensive. And in today's age, especially 2025, there's a lot of inflation. Mental health, unfortunately, Parity Acts and, just mental health in general is not funded very well. And so the onus is on the person that is hurting and the therapist to really hold the economics of therapy. And so as a result, a lot of people don't have access to therapy. And so if I could just create a replica of what I'm doing in the therapy space and place it within a book, then it creates greater access, and that's what I was hoping for. And the added bonus is that I get to have the title of bestseller, and I get to carry that for life, and that's beautiful. And, I'm really grateful for that. But I think the more beautiful part of it all is that wherever I go to speak, at the end of my talks, I usually have Q&As or book signings, and people come up to me in tears, and in multi-generational crowds where it's a mother, daughter, and granddaughter, and they tell me about the impact of the book and how it's helped to heal their families through generations, like cross generations. And I think that that's the power of this work.
Definitely. You mentioned something about people seeking healing. It's also a cultural thing, too, where, the saying, what happens in this house, especially for a lot of communities, I know my own, what happens in this house stays in this house. And so that somewhat prevents people from seeking the help that they truly need and being transparent about the help that they need in those moments. With the trauma center, do you confront those type of stereotypes, and do you notice that a lot of clients carry that type of baggage?
Yes, a lot of clients carry that type of baggage, and yes, very intentionally and even like proactively. I and my therapy associates that work within the center together with me also address those kinds of cultural scripts that are actually incredibly damaging to families, and can actually be a part of what tends to keep trauma alive within families.
The silence.
The secrets that are kept in the closet of family secrets, the brushing things under the rug, the not airing the dirty laundry, the, shame keeping, the not addressing any kind of mental discomfort or mental health challenge because it could bring stigma upon the family. Any of those things, including other kinds of cultural scripts, like cultural scripts around protecting people that harm people within family, right? Instead of protecting the ones that have been harmed. And many, many others. I mentioned a few within the Break the Cycle book, but there are so many that are captured within the context of the therapeutic work, that I have done over the years, and that, a lot of my colleagues have done. And all of those have to be addressed, because we cannot heal only a part of the wound. We can't help a person to just heal the individual part of the wound. We must also engage in healing the part of the wound that is a part of the collective cultural scripts that are also there, that are also feeding the wound.
Totally. And I connect with that on so many levels. I am, and this is probably the first time I think I've openly said this on a public forum, a third generation sexual assault survivor. And maybe even fourth or fifth, right? I don't know. But growing up, I remember my mother being forced to have to interact with her abuser, who happened to be a family member. And to this day, I remember having a conversation with one of my family members, and they had no idea that my mother endured those things by someone that we are family, that we're related to. And so I say that because to think about it now in hindsight as an adult and in therapy, to be forced to see your abuser and to interact with them, and still have family, right? What family is, how difficult that must have been for her.
Yes.
And so I say that because there are other people like my mother and my grandmother. I don't know who my abuser is because I was so young, but for my mother, she did know. So for people that have to interact with their abuser, what advice do you give them in terms of wanting to heal that space?
Yeah, and I honor your story and your willingness to share.
Thank you.
With me, and
not easy by any means.
I know that, and that is why I just want to take a moment to honor how powerful it is to be able to sit and state from your position how the generations have been wounded and how you've been a part of that wounding. Like, saying that is not something that comes easy, and it's not something that can be, taken lightly. I think that I just want to, explain that and just take a moment, to just honor the stories that have been held, like within the women in your family. And the unfortunate part of me sitting in the psychologist chair throughout all of the years that I've been therapizing is that I have unfortunately seen that, and I'm telling you, I mean, I haven't kept a full inventory, but I can say in the high 90 percentages of the people that I have been honored to work with, those individuals have had similar histories of sexual assault and molestation, multi-generational molestation within their family lines. It is something that is so incredibly common and is so detrimental to the well-being of families.
Totally.
And I part of the reason why I sought to address it in Break the Cycle in a very public way was because I wanted us to begin to hold individuals that are identified perpetrators accountable, and to stop coddling individuals or helping them to feel a sense of safety within families, and to shift that sense of safety into the individuals that need it most. That whole, but it's your family member, but they're your father, they're your uncle, they're your grandmother, they're your this. That kind of language has been utilized so much to weaponize individuals that have been already placed in such a vulnerable position to then have to interact with individuals that have harmed them so deeply, and it is re-traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I wish that we, as a new culture, as a new generation, as a new global generation, could take perhaps the opportunity to create a generational shift in that we could exclaim that we will no longer protect individuals that harm children,
Mm-hmm.
protect individuals that harm others either physically or sexually, and that render them vulnerable in such pervasive ways, and that we can instead hold them accountable and create systemic accountability. So that it will no longer happen at the levels, at least, that it continues to happen. Because I am only one psychologist, and for the number of people I have mostly been working with individuals that identify as people of color within all of the practices even the hospitals that I've worked in. But for me to have worked with hundreds of people, and of those hundreds, for many of those stories to be very similar,
It's awful.
It's really alarming.
And what stands out to me when you say that is that so often we feel isolated.
Yes.
Which comes from shame due to the silence and not being vocal.
Yes.
And here you are saying, you know what? These stories are more common than you even realize. But if we continue to have these open conversations, we recognize that we share, unfortunately, this trauma that we are transforming into triumph.
Yeah.
You not only sit in the doctor's chair, but you also went through the work.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about what your journey was like, and also tapping into some of your own generational trauma and bringing your family along for this healing process as well?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's been nice to see that online. You've been very vocal, having the conversations with your mother, with your sister, and just bringing them in.
Yes, and it just the same as I'm sure, the moments in which you have been open to and privy to the fact that generational trauma exists within your family, those moments for me definitely broke me open too, right? Like, as a human that had to see the pain that my mother had to exist within for the decades that she had to exist within that pain. The same with my grandmother. And the stories that, I think some of them were a bit vivid for Break the Cycle, because I tried to take a bit of the perspective of the psychologist. And also, interestingly enough, I actually did a coming home journey after Break the Cycle was completed. And in that coming home journey, I actually took hours of videos of interviews of the women in my family. And this was already, everything was already out to print. But then I interviewed the women in my family, and I gathered more stories. And the stories were deeper than I even thought. And they were hurting even more than I had imagined. And they were able to release more than I thought. And I was hurting even more than I thought, you know? And so there were so many things that were still there and that needed to be released. And, you know, the thing about this kind of work that I desire for everyone to know is that it's not pretty. It's not.
That's not.
It's really.
But the healing.
The healing.
The healing is because you feel so much lighter.
You do.
And you own it.
And you deserve it.
Yes.
And that's the thing, is that most times people, and some of us do this unconsciously, most times people do not want to or can't get to the healing.
Yeah.
Or we actually build psychological defenses so that we don't actually engage in the healing because it hurts too much.
Yeah.
It hurts to know the things my mother went through. I had no idea. My mother suffered a lot. And things that wow. You know, and so the thing about all of that is that
I can see the pain on your face.
Yeah, because it you know, sometimes you just interact with people in their roles.
Yeah.
As your mother.
And not looking at her as the woman.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or as the daughter that, you know, was viciously attacked, you know, by people that she trusted, right? Like, or as the, you know, like just the things that people have had to undergo that you've loved, and just having to hold that story on their behalf. Mm-hmm. And the great thing about me is that I have had the internal resources to be able to hold the story with my mother. And so I'm grateful for that.
When you say the internal resources, are you referencing the professional capacity?
Correct, but also the work that I've done within myself to be able to sit with her story and not crumble, and feel like I got this, Mom. I got this with you.
Do you feel like that also gave you the healing version of you, allowed the empathy, and allowed you to see her not as your mother, but just as a woman?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that she deserved that, and she needed that also from both of her daughters, myself and my sister, who operate very differently. We both have very different personalities, and we balance each other out in how we support my mother. And I think that my mother needed both supports, right? And the thing is that all of that was necessary in the healing journey. And there were pockets of time. It wasn't always like really heavy. But there were pockets of time where we came across different pieces of information and we were like, okay, the heavy's starting again. And eventually, right, we were like, okay, interestingly enough, the other day, my sister and I, we were like, what is happening with life? Because we feel bored. And we were like, this is what healing feels like. It's boring.
I laugh because, yes.
Because you don't
look for those fireworks. You don't look for those red flags. When you recognize them, you're like, stage left.
There's no drama. Good. There's no drama. There's no chaos. And you're like, there's nothing happening. It's boring here. And that's the thing. It's that, you know, life has always had something.
Yeah, some zest.
Yes, some zest. I love that. So when you're kind of like done with a lot of the gunk, you know, you're kind of like, you know, like myself and my sister making pineapple jam, and, you know, just like not really, you know, having, like waiting for the next, you know, thing to happen that's going to like crumble our lives. And so that's the thing, is that, you know, we had to go through that. And sometimes people are really afraid of that. But when they have the right tools and the techniques to go through the mud and survive it, they can actually see the other side. They can see the boredom, which is actually really nice.
Yes.
It's peaceful.
We went down the weeds, we went through the mud, and now we're the flower that is starting to sprout up.
The lotus.
The lotus.
Yes.
Let's talk about practical tips that people can take away.
You know, I always like to lean on anything that's accessible, right? For
your book?
For my book,
Your book, Break the Cycle.
You know, and especially now, I think, you know, now you can find it just about everywhere with, you know, a lot of discounts. But even any single day, people have the opportunity to do things that can actually help the nervous system to restore. And I think I talk about the nervous system a lot because for many of us, we don't have prior knowledge of the fact that our nervous systems actually carry a lot of our pain.
What are some of those signs? I know for me, I used to always feel anxious. And I had to start to, as my therapist taught me, self-soothe. So for other people, what are some of those signs where you can recognize, okay, my nervous system's a little out of whack, right?
For a lot of people, if you are an hour or two into darkness during bedtime and you still have not been able to go into a rest state.
Wow.
Because your mind is just so racing. It's racing, it's thinking about all the things. You know, that's a state of unrest, right? Like that's you not being able to really get into what we call like the nervous system state of rest and restoration, or the parasympathetic nervous system state, which tends to be not as easily accessible for people that have suffered traumas. And so it's important to get into activities that can actually get you there more easily. And it's not hard. It really isn't hard. For most people, a lot of what we need to do is just repetition of very easy tasks, like doing maybe some deep breathing, which is something that's just simple. It's just something you can do even for a minute of your day.
Like what? Can we do it right now briefly?
Yeah. Yes.
What does that look like?
So what it looks like is you simply going into an elongated breath, longer than what your natural breath is, and it typically looks like 5 seconds in and 7 seconds out. So I'll count us in and out, and we can just go inhale in.
Okay.
And then out for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'll do that one more time, just
That feels good.
remodeling, right? It just kind of like melts you into your seat, right? So you can breathe in one more time for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and release for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I was fighting for that breath, and I went in strong.
I know.
was like,
most of us do, but eventually you'll catch it, right? It's because we're not programmed to like really, you know. And for everybody's different, right? Like, and we have to take into account, you know, ability status and everything. And sometimes we can just do 4 and 4.
That's what, and I was about to mention that the 4, 4, and I believe 7 or 6 release. I'm used to.
Yeah, whatever works for, you know, your body works, as long as you just elongate your breath. And what that does is that actually like helps your body and your nervous system specifically to register we are entering rest and release. We're no longer in that threat and alarm state that is so familiar to us, that is actually indicative of the trauma that has existed here for so many decades, so many generations, right? And the beautiful thing about this, because a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to take a breath. How is that going to help me? We do have science to corroborate that this is actually changing your body at a cellular level. The more that you do it, the more that your body is registering that you are changing it, that you are actually re-engaging your body from a place of health and not from a place of trauma.
And negative self-talk does not help. So starting off already with that type of talk, well, how's breathing going to help me? That's you're already moving in the wrong direction, sis.
Yes.
Bring it back to center.
Yes.
Positivity wins at all costs. What does it feel like for you to be a cycle breaker? Because you handle everything so differently. Like when you're faced with certain things and conflict, your response is different from, at least for me, let me speak for myself. My response is so different than what it was when I was, and I'm still healing. So I don't want to sound like a finished product, but we all are.
Always.
So what does that feel like for you to be that cycle breaker and to bring your family along?
Well, I experienced a lot of pride. I think that the thing about being a cycle breaker is that we can actually inculcate pride into our journey to take the place of shame. And that's the thing.
Yes.
It's like, it's not that it's a perfect equation of like, now I am, straddling across the world with like, no, it's not like that. It's that we can actually engage in situations very differently. Our relationships feel different. It's that we can no longer sit and stew in shame, and we replace that with emotions that better serve us and the people around us, and that we also exist within communities. We are part of social microcosms of communities and of societies that we connect with on a daily basis, and that those communities will also benefit from the healing that we partake in. And so it has a ripple effect, and it's a beautiful thing.
Definitely. And I want to add this to what you're saying, because you said sit and stew, but sometimes chasing success, that's also part of trauma, right? Because you're constantly chasing what's next. And when you accomplish something, it's never enough. And then you move on so fast to the next thing, and that's never enough.
Yes. Yeah.
So sometimes it's not just sulking in the corner. It's also just not being satisfied and not celebrating the little wins and the big wins, because you don't know how to accept that you are that person and you're capable of that.
That's actually become a part of my newer journey of cycle breaking. And that's a beautiful thing, is that, you can just kind of like have new evolutions of how you break cycles. I am now, owning different kinds of businesses, and I'm now engaging in different ways of engaging in what success looks like for me. Success is also, that beautiful flower in my lemon tree that's flowering, and it's going to eventually become a lemon. And that's beautiful to me. And it's also grounding, and it also reminds me of my grandmother's gardening. And it's little things that, are big things for me now.
And we're going to wrap soon, but since you mentioned your many businesses, it's also no longer working for free.
That's right.
You spoke about that on your Instagram, and that hit a nerve where you said working for free is a trauma response.
That's right.
Break that down, because we're not talking about people who are just starting out, right? Because sometimes you need to work for free, you need to intern. But for people that are at your level, at my level, where sometimes we still feel the need, where we don't want to say our worth. We don't want to put a dollar sign to it. Talk about that.
Well, that's a learned response. It's a response that is created around scarcity, right? And around the perception that we may be left out of the equation, or we may be forgotten. We also get fed messages by society, by business partners around offering our time as a way of offering generosity to, people, to audiences. And to be honest, as I see it, I think working for free is a version of self-abandonment, is a way also that we perpetuate the ways in which trauma has been inculcated into our families, especially families that come from communities where we've been forced into free labor. And I think that if we are to be legacy builders, part of our legacies need to be framed around how we recreate the concept of worth, and how we identify different points of our self-worth, and we reflect what our self-worth is externally by how we identify how people are to pay us for our time and for our wisdom. And so now I have made it a rule, a hard set rule, that I will no longer, for the entirety of my life, work for free. And it's something that I am offering myself also as a gift to the people in my family and my lineage, and particularly the people that are a part of my racial legacy, who were forced into labor that they did not desire to partake in, that I am going to no longer work for free on their behalf, but also that I am going to be a generational wealth builder by way of no longer taking in free work for myself or my family. It's just not something I'm willing to do. And I think it's something I stand on with so much pride versus what I used to do, which was stand on it with so much guilt. And I love that, that article was actually well received by a lot of people.
I'm sure.
Because I want a lot of people to do the same for themselves and for their families and for their legacies.
So I noticed that you are engaged, and I am a girl's girl, so I'm super excited for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How much do you feel your healing contributed to this next phase of your life and being engaged?
Wow. Well, it for sure has created an openness.
There it is.
Yeah. To me being able to receive this love in the ways that I have. It is an evolving process because the love that I have in my life is one that is so big and is so incredibly outpouring into my life that I still am constantly learning how to receive it. So although I have done a lot of the work, and some of my work, some of the unlearning for me has been unlearning how to be less of a hyper-independence and someone who, just kind of over-relies upon self. Because
Miss Independent.
Miss I can't really trust anyone, or, I have to take care of everyone. I am, the matriarch, the one that everybody comes to, and
I'm last.
I'm last. I've got it all taken care of. I can't, show weakness, whatever that might mean. And so all of these things are being already really crumbled down even further than what my healing had already done with this relationship, which is actually something that I wasn't anticipating, but it's such a gift. And for me, this era of my life is one in which I am so grateful because I didn't realize that a relationship could actually also teach me more about how to receive.
Well, he's teaching you, or I don't know, they are teaching you how to receive. Are they also teaching you how to love on a level that maybe you weren't familiar with?
Well, yes, he is teaching me how to love on a level that I didn't realize was possible. And I had actually not realized would be made possible for me in this lifetime. Because I am, even in my profession, I am someone that cares for and gives. And I think that, but especially in the area of love, I just didn't realize that love like this could exist because, I'm kind of like the skeptic that sees the engagement photos on social media. And I'm like,
scroll.
The statistics are that, this is likely to last, blah, 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 so, and so I just, I became that person and very hardened mostly by my, lack of trust and hyper-independence.
Your own trauma.
My own traumas. And to see all of it play out so differently in my life gives me an opportunity to hold on to hope, but also to, really inculcate that in my work. But for me personally, there is a level of healing that I had no idea I needed and that could be made possible in my life.
That's beautiful. All right. Well, this was very fruitful. I'm sure our audience feels the same way. How can people find you?
Well, people can find me at drmarielbuqué.com, and from a therapy or therapeutic training perspective at breakthecycleoftrauma.com.
And the Trauma Center.
That's the Trauma
That's the Trauma Center. And you said that's in New York, Florida.
And New Jersey.
And New Jersey as well. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Our last question for you. If passion fuels your journey and faith lights the way, what uncharted territories await you?
Interestingly, I think that this is going to be probably a shocker to you, maybe to anyone listening too, because I think there is this perception of me when people meet me and when people listen to my work, right, that there is a level of softness that I've achieved. But there is some deepened, really unhindered softness that I know is there and is awaiting me and is a part of my liberation, my emotional liberation, that I believe I am going to experience in this lifetime, and I'm very intentional about connecting with. And sometimes, luckily, I've been able to really look at my fiance and see him in the slowness of his life. Like, he really slows down and watches sunsets and slows down and really takes in the elements of life, the simple things. And although I do that, I've never seen it done the way that he does. And really like savoring life and the gentleness of life in that way. And I want that for myself. And I believe that that's something that requires practice and intentionality. And that's where my life is leading me. That's the uncharted territory where I want to situate myself for the rest of my life. And that's where I'm heading.
Is your fiance a Pisces?
No, a Libra, but
I sound so much
my
like
sister's a Pisces, and she tends to be, she tends to be quite similar to him.
I'm a Pisces. That's why I'm like, that's such a...
That's why we vibe so well. But yeah, maybe because he's a Libra, he's so balanced. I'm not so great. I always lean on my cousin to really kind of orient me around signs, but he is very balanced, and I thought I was. Like, he should be the psychologist, really. But I think there's so much that I'm learning just by looking at him and watching him navigate softness, even with his own masculinity. Like, the way that he's able to like really kind of like merge the two in a way that is so incredibly healthy is something that is beautifully modeled to me unintentionally, that I would love to integrate into my life.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
This was great.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. All right. Well, until next time, stay in passion and flow in faith. We'll see you on the next episode of Passion and Faith.